Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today's video is going to be probably a shorter one. I actually have a planned podcast later tonight, the second one for this week. It's going to be about the direct that is reportedly next week, Attack the Backlog. We'll be talking about whether this is a partner, what's been going on, what we think, and we'll also be getting into some of our thoughts on the Tomodachi Life Direct that happened today. But what I want to focus on for a few minutes here is this potential leak for Zelda's 40th anniversary. Potential, maybe, possibly, not for sure. But I definitely think there's something to this here. This isn't a nothing burger in my opinion. This is something we should be keeping in mind as we see how Nintendo handles Zelda's 40th anniversary. And I've talked about why I think it's very likely Nintendo's going to be pushing Zelda's 40th anniversary. One, they do push Zelda anniversaries not as much as Mario, but as they have seen the success of Mario's recent anniversary celebrations and all its cross-promotion, I think they're probably going to do something similar with Zelda, especially with the movie coming out next year, and it also being the beginning of the Switch 2 generation. You do want to find a way to push this IP. And we've even seen that they've already announced the Ocarina of Time Lego set, so things are already getting started here for Zelda's 40th anniversary, and I think there's going to be more, but I don't think we're going to see a lot until after the Mario movie comes out. Now, if we do somehow get a general direct before the Mario movie comes out, when that presentation comes, I do think there'll probably be something Zelda there, but they're not going to go full force into Zelda's 40th anniversary until afterwards, or rather, the way I'm sort of seeing it, we're going to be getting different Zelda-related announcements throughout the year. It's going to be spread out, unlike how they handled Mario, where it all happened, for the most part, in one direct last September. And so in short, don't expect what we're talking about today to show up next week. Maybe it does somehow, but that's not necessarily what I'm getting at, but I do think this might show up at some point this year. So what is this thing? I want to go back to a podcast that just happened a couple days ago from Nate the Hate. A lot of people have been talking about it. Nate the Hate is a known industry insider, gets a lot of things correct, not everything, no one gets everything right, but many things. Most people trust him very much as a very reliable insider, and so he talked about a variety of things he heard that are happening in 2026. We've covered that already. But he also went to some predictions that were not spoken of as things he heard, and a lot of people really ran away with these as strong possibilities for this year. But again, they are predictions. He's not talking about them as leaks. However, some people think that he might be predicting these things because they are based off some things he has heard. Now, Nate did not say that, so this is a slippery slope. I am not saying these predictions are leaks, so please keep that in mind. However, whether it's based off something he's heard or not, they are predictions because he thinks they make sense. And so yeah, there's probably some reason to it. And so a lot of people started talking about there being a definitive edition for Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And I already talked about this. I think it does make sense for the Xenoblade games to get enhanced. We've seen some evidence for that. I don't know about specifically a definitive edition, maybe a Switch 2 edition. We'll see what happens. But sure, that does kind of make some sense. But there was something else that was said for Zelda's 40th anniversary that caught my eye. And that's when Nate took some time to talk about how he thinks we need to see remakes for the Oracle of Ages and Seasons games this year. And I find this interesting because a couple years ago, Oracle of Ages and Seasons came out for the NSO app. So if you have Nintendo Switch Online, you can go to the Game Boy app and play Oracle of Ages and Seasons. So to predict that Nintendo would be remaking these for the 40th anniversary, I find that curious. Now, something I think is important to stress, especially after the recent Walmart leak where we saw Metroid Prime 2 listed there, just because we get one of these games on the Switch Online app does not mean they won't eventually remaster or remake it. Oh, and by the way, Nintendo put out a statement regarding this leak saying that it was a mistake. They did not mean to send that image to Walmart. It's not correct. Which to me, it just sounds like they're covering themselves here and they just didn't want to reveal that stuff so soon. I definitely think it was a leak, but you know, we'll see what happens eventually. But something else we've heard from Nintendo before, or one of Nintendo's executives, is from the Senior Vice President of Nintendo of America, Nate Bildorf, where he was having a conversation with Tim Geddes from Kind of Funny Games, friend of the channel, about what games get remastered or remade, because they were talking about how Wind Waker is in the Switch Online library, but of course, people have been hoping for a Wind Waker HD. So Nate Bildorf, not to confuse with Nate the Hate, does say that just because a game is in the Switch Online library doesn't mean a developer won't consider remastering or remaking it. So with us already being a few years removed from the inclusion of Oracle of Ages and Seasons, maybe it's now fair to consider these as potential remakes. I know a lot of fans want these particular games remade. I actually haven't played these games that much. They were one of the few Zelda games I haven't played. I probably should, given that they're already available on the Game Boy app. But these would be very good games to get remade. Now, what I find especially interesting about this conversation, or these whispers about an Oracle of Ages and Seasons remake for the Zelda 40th anniversary, is that we did hear about something last year from another leaker, Nash Weedle. He had posted on January 25th, 2025, so a year ago, Richard, Edward, then Bernard. Now, if you don't understand the context of this, Richard is the code name for Link's Awakening Remake. That came out in 2019. And Edward is the codename for Echoes of Wisdom that came out back in 2024. Not that long ago, but now we're approaching 2 years since its release. Both of these games are made in the same art style by Grezzo, and so with this third one, it would lead you to believe that perhaps we're getting another game along these lines. That would be the implication by Nash Weedle. And so what I find interesting about this is that if an Oracle of Ages and Seasons remake has been in the works, that is the kind of game that I could see maybe Grezzo working on that would have a codename like Bernard. And so if this year we do see some kind of 2D top-down Zelda announced for Switch 2 for the 40th anniversary, and it has the codename of Bernard, then we know Nash Weedle has some crazy awesome sources, clearly. I already think he has some pretty crazy awesome sources because he's heard about a lot of things that are so left field that people would not predict, like how he leaked that there would be Virtual Boy coming to Nintendo Classics, which was confirmed months later, or how he leaked the new lines for the Mario Wonder Flower, or how there would be Donkey Kong instead of Mario in the big Switch 2 Direct that happened last April. And these are just some things, there's plenty more, but something like this to hear so far in advance would be pretty crazy. And to be clear, Bernard is not necessarily Oracle of Ages and Seasons. It could maybe be a new 2D Zelda game instead, or perhaps remaking another Zelda game. But the thing is, given that Echoes of Wisdom just came out in 2024, I would think it would be very odd for us to see another new 2D Zelda just 2 years later for the 40th anniversary. That would be a very, very quick turnaround unless it was something that wasn't really mainline. Like if it was maybe like a Four Swords or a Triforce Heroes, that wouldn't be as long of an adventure, more of a multiplayer focused 2D top-down Zelda game. That I could see, which has happened before, but basically the next new top-down Zelda, 2 years later, especially after how long we waited between Link's Awakening Remake, which was just a remake, and Echoes of Wisdom, I just think that would be unrealistic. But maybe, because they were preparing for the 40th anniversary, and because we also did hear that Echoes of Wisdom was ready well in advance, maybe they have been working on another top-down Zelda, but it's a remake which would have a shorter turnaround, and perhaps Oracle of Ages and Seasons would be one of the few really good options to do for the 40th anniversary. Another good one would be A Link to the Past, maybe Minish Cap, another one of the Capcom-made games like Oracle of Ages and Seasons. So those would all be awesome. But I'll throw out another possibility here that I think would be really interesting. So there was a third canceled version of Oracle of Ages and Seasons. It was initially meant to be 3 different games. There was going to be 3 games titled The Mystical Seed of Power, Wisdom, and Courage. And so we got a blue-themed Zelda game in Ages and a red-themed Zelda game in Seasons, but we didn't get the green-themed, the Triforce of Courage, the side of Link, not Zelda or Ganon. And so what if, after putting out Oracle of Ages and Seasons, they thought, let's sort of remake another Oracle game, but actually deliver on bringing back that third game concept, and this would be a brand new one. That would be super interesting, especially if you go and play Oracle of Ages and Seasons on the Game Boy app, and your progress there has some impact on this game. That would be very cool. Oftentimes, these remakes at least have some new elements to them, so maybe this could be that new element. And you know, I find this idea especially interesting because if we do see more of an emphasis on green tunic Link leading up to the movie, this could play a role in that. I don't think this would be the only game for the anniversary. There are other theories. I've talked about how my prediction is that Nintendo will tease the next big 3D Zelda project this year, which I do believe is the Ocarina of Time remake, which, if I'm on the money, would not be coming out until after the live-action movie next year, but still, we could see it this year, and that alongside other merchandising, maybe another quick port of maybe Twilight Princess, and with this LEGO set we're getting for Ocarina of Time, all that different stuff could really showcase Green Tunic Link and figure into the cross-promotion leading into the movie that will feature this iconic look of Link, bringing it back since we've been so busy with the Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom era. Now, if you've gone all the way to this point in the video and you find yourself enjoying my videos, I'd like to point out that I do have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers hopefully soon. So, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Liking and commenting also makes a huge difference too. But what do you make of this codename Bernard, and what do you make of this possibility of an Oracle of Ages and Seasons remake? Could they be one and the same? What might change? Will we see it for the 40th anniversary? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.